I also had one more thing I wanted to say before we quickly jump into looking at some sizing stuff as well as the ranges. If your opponent goes bigger or smaller, you want to adjust your range as well. So these are all assuming default 3-bet sizes, the sizes that I'm recommending you to use, around 7.5 over min raise, 9x over 2.5x, and around 11.5x over 3x. So if you're playing someone and they're going really big, you could use the tight range if they were a default player or a loose player. You can, if they're going really small, you can use the loose range even if they're a tight player. Basically, the idea is you're going to have to make some small adjustments, kind of like in every segment of this video series. We give the defaults, we figure out the range, and then we make little adjustments. So I want you to know that this is based around a normal size 3-bet. Make sure you change from size to size, and maybe actually that would be a good way to test yourself, would be to look at your default range, and then make, okay, this guy made it 11 blinds instead of 10 blinds or 9 blinds. What would I do? And make sure you're going to change your strategy versus all of those things. So that's more important online when you're playing in tough matches, but I want to make sure we get that out of the way. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look here at just some basic math on 4-betting to begin with. So let's just say that we're going to open to 2.5. Let's say they're going to 3-bet to 9. Okay, so we'll just use these standard sizes. So our standard 4-bet size, if I had to recommend something, I would probably recommend going about 2.5x their 4-bet size. So that would be 18, so kind of like a 22.5-ish sized 4-bet. Now, this can change. If you're playing something with a low 4-bet, it could be better to go 23, 24. If you're playing someone that folds a lot, it could go down to more like 20. And also, you want to take into consideration what your opponent's 3-betting strategy is. Against people that are using a lot of polarization, like us, it could be better to go a small size because those bluffs are going to get crushed. That said, when you're playing somebody that has a more mergy, value-centric type 3-betting strategy, it can make sense to go more like 20, 24, 25. So the point is 2.5x is the standard size facing a 3-bet, and we're going to base our math around that. So if we 4-bet to the size, and let's say that they fold 35 and they 5-bet 10%, you have to have about 36% equity in order to make this worthwhile. So let's just quickly do a quick analysis here. So let's say take ace-5 off, which is like one of our most standard bluffs, and let's just say that they've got a kind of normal flat 4-bet-ish range. Some of these, maybe a few of the middling pairs, those are less likely. Maybe some of those as well. So you're definitely going to have enough equity here with ace-5 off should they be playing a pretty normal strategy. The problem is I actually do think that hands like ace-5 off, we always talk about in position we overrealize. I think the weak aces in 4-bet pots heads up actually under-realize, because the thing is the ace-high flops are known for being quite strong for the 4-better. So you're going to get way more action on boards you brick, which makes me think that this actually ends up being less equity than normal. And I think some of these other hands that we're going to talk about, like King 8 or 10-9, I think those hands actually tend to overrealize a little bit more. But, we're still right in that ballpark where it's going to be fine. That said, 10% is a pretty low 5-bet. I think the traditional opponent, at least nowadays, tends to be about fold 35, 4-bet 20. And when we look at that, all of a sudden we need to have 44% equity, which, not very which is not very attractive when you look at this and we have 43% and we think it probably under-realizes. So 4-bet bluffing, it's not that attractive, which is why we tend to use more value than bluffs. However, it still is around break even. It gives you more action on your good hands. And let's just say they don't 5-bet that much and they mainly call. You do get a chance to have a very good continuation bet opportunity, as well as some chances to play later streets. So, if you want to 4-bet bluff a little bit less, I think 70-ish% value can become good. That said, I would really try and keep it around 60%. I think 60% and you're in a really good place. Because the thing is then, you're going to fold 40% to jam. And maybe when they have an ace, it's a little bit more. But it's probably not going to change too much. But the thing is, they can't really do too much to counter you. If they start trying to jam light, they're going to get crushed by all your value bets. And if they start trying to call light, you're going to have a nice mix of playable hands as well as some value bets. I think it's just a really good strategy to keep their 3-bet off guard. And also it allows you to have, I think, around the highest 4-bet frequency while not being exploitable, which I think is important. Okay, so let's just take a look at the math here, because let me show you guys something. Let's say that someone folds 50%, which is what we're trying to avoid. This is what I was discussing earlier. Let's say someone folds 50% to 3-bet, sorry, to 5-bet. Then let's put a hand like 6-5 suited. And let's put in a 4-bet call range. This has 28% equity. You need 30%. So it's really close with a hand as bad as 6-5 suited. Now let's take look at a hand like 8-7 suited. Equity actually goes down. Interesting. So maybe in this exact example, without having ace-queen as a 4-bet call, these weak hands are barely folds, are barely not able to jam, but just barely. And if you take a hand like ace-jack, you're definitely clearing the bar. Now, if you make this fold 40%, all of a sudden, it goes up a lot. So you're more in the ballpark of having to have maybe ace-queen. Actually, probably won't change very much. A little bit better. Okay, so you need to really have like ace-king or 10s plus to kind of be in that ballpark. 9s plus. Okay, so big drop-off, obviously, from 10s to 9s. So the point is, with this strategy, they can't really jam anything that's not 10s plus ace-king on you profitably. You know, maybe you're not worried about that. Maybe you want to have more like 55% value than 60% value. But as you get to 50%, you're just opening up for all kinds of hands to be able to jam on you. So I like keeping this in the 40 to 45% range. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on why we 4-bet 60% value. And this is actually going to lead into talking about how we're going to play against 4-bets in the next section where we talk about big blind. But anyway, let's move on. Let's look at the actual ranges here. So let me pull this up. All right. So of course, all these ranges you have access to as well. And here we have the 4-bet range for playing as a tight 3-bet. Now, note, this has a 6% of all hands are going to be 4-betting, which if you're opening 80%, it's going to be around 7 or 8% 4-bet. Which is fine. This is a nice amount of 4-betting, I think. If you take away the bluffs, we're at 5.9%. Remember, all these offsuit bluffs are only a quarter of the time, and all these suited bluffs are half the time. So you take this away, it should be around 3.8, 3.9% value, which I think it might actually be a little bit less, 3.5% value. But still, majority value, we're in a good place here. Now, a lot of players, and this is something that I really don't understand, because, and we're going to look at this in the analysis segment of talking about playing versus 3-bet, but this is something I don't really understand because people have been doing this for a long time, and I really have never gotten it. But every time I've looked at calling weak ace-x offsuits against normal-sized 3-bets, it's always done really badly. It's always done worse than fold. So I'm not sure why it seems every person does it. Maybe they haven't done analysis. Maybe they don't have a big enough sample. Maybe it's to deter their opponents from 3-betting them, which I guess makes sense. If you fold all the ace-x's, you do end up folding a lot to 3-bet. As you can see, this continue range, it only ends up being about, something along the lines of 33% of your hands. Again, this is against a tight range, though, so that's certainly something to consider. But the thing is, I just don't think those hands end up being profitable. What I've generally seen in these 3-bet pots, as far as fighting 3-bets go, is that offsuit aces just massively underrealize. Suited hands tend to overrealize dramatically, and connected hands tend to be somewhere in the middle. So I would way rather have 10-9 off than ace-3 off. I'd way rather have queen-5 suited than 10-9 off. So I think that the ranges that we have here kind of reflect that. But also, you can vary it based on your own style, based on what you've seen, based on your sample. I guess that's something that I say a lot, but it is true that a lot of these fringe hands, when we're selecting these bluffs, a lot of them are close, and it's more important to have a good balanced strategy than it is to be like, oh man, you use king 2 suited in your 4-bet versus type players? Wow, what a donk, you should use king 4. It's not going to matter that much. If you wanted to be like, you know what, Doug, versus type players, I actually prefer this. you know, and then these are all half. I would say there's no problem with that. I think that maybe that's a little bit worse, but you're all entitled to your own opinion, and it's going to be close and EV either way. The thing is, these decisions are going to be based around a bunch of stuff, and you know, you want to base it around post flop a little bit, but you start with your default, then you adjust to the size, then you adjust to your opponent's frequency, then you consider post flop play, and you do all of those things to make it maybe a little wider, a little bit looser. So this is our default tight range. As we get to the default range, it's kind of interesting because now that we have more value bets, we actually were adding in nines. We got a few more bluffs here as well. So we added a couple more offsuit hands, maybe another suited hand or two as well. Again, we have 7% of all hands here. And if we take away the bluffs, we're looking at about 4% value. So again, we're going to be more value than bluff to deter our opponents from getting that 5-bet jam opportunity. And if you look at the bluffs, they've shifted downwards. You know, they're now these weakest King X suited, these weaker 4 suited hands, King 8 instead of King 9, 9 8 instead of 10 9. Everything shifts down. And then once again, when you look at versus loose players, now you have 8s as well and ace queen suited. So now you have 8% 4-bet or 8% of all hands 4-betting, or 8.4% of all hands. So now we get to have way more bluffs. You know, we're going to call with almost all of our suited hands facing the 3-bet. You know, we're going to 4-bet 8s for value. This shouldn't be in here. And as you can see, this is now something along the lines of 51% of all hands. This is a loose range. Now, you might note the ace X here are selected as calls and 4-bets, which means I actually want to have the 3/4 of the time you don't 4-bet to be call, and 1/4 of the time you do 4-bet to be 4-bets. Again, even versus loose 3-bets, I have seen this go badly, but if it's the 3-bets are small on the small side and your opponent's playing really loose and aggro, you might need to mix these in. And sometimes I do think there is merit in calling with some hands pre-flop that maybe aren't going to be plus EV calls, just to deter the overall 3-bet frequency of your opponent. Getting 3-bet sucks in no limit. It removes the equity of your bad hands. But I can go either way with those hands. It's kind of up to you. I will say you should very, very much familiarize yourself with all of these ranges, how to adjust to different sizes, how to adjust to different opponents. You should be familiar with all of this stuff. If you want to play poker, heads-up poker at an elite level, this isn't just wing it. You gotta know this stuff. You gotta realize at what point do I 4-bet this hand. Because if you open to 2.5 and they make it 8 or they make it 9, and you're gonna treat it the same, that's a mistake. And frankly, I have played people where I exploited that mistake because they didn't care if it was 8 or 9. They just played the same range, you know, and that is a mistake. You should have ranges for everything. Again, it depends how far do you want to take it, how specific do you want to get, how serious are you going to take it. If you want to play at the elite level, you're going to have to do this stuff. You know, that's one of the ways you can get edge in today's games is by adjusting in these spots that players don't adjust to enough. So familiarize yourself with these ranges, get your 4-bets down, and let's jump in and do a little bit of analysis on some of these flats and some of these 4-bets.